Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm Zeus Caraval from ZK Research, and I'm here on site at Arista's headquarters, actually where Arista hosted their Cloud and AI Innovator Day yesterday. In fact, Arista does this event annually as a way to update Wall Street and industry analysts on their strategy. I'm joined today by Bob Laliberte of Enterprise Strategy Group. Bob, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. Thanks, Zeus.
Quick intro on yourself.
Yeah, hey, everyone. So I'm the principal analyst at the Enterprise Strategy Group covering the networking space. So I've been watching Arista for a long time now. So looking forward to having the discussion today.
I always like to say Bob puts the S, the strategy, in Enterprise Strategy Group. So, so this is an annual event. And as I said, a lot of it's aimed at the investor. And so, of course, investors like to hear numbers and things like that. And before we get into a lot of the details, the technical details of what they discussed, let's talk a little bit about the business side of Arista. So during a keynote, their CEO, Jayshree Ullal, talked about the growth of Arista. She said it took them 12 years to get to 5 billion, right? And their goal is to actually hit the next 5 billion, to get to 10 billion in half that time, so 6 more years. What do you think about that goal? It certainly seems lofty, Bob.
Yeah, it certainly does. But I think, they've also, as we'll talk about a little bit later, they've spelled out where they believe they can achieve that growth. And it's like I said, getting to 5 billion in 12 years is also pretty damn impressive. And they've continued to hit the mark with the technology they brought to the market. The customers seem to be responsive. So I'm certainly not going to bet against them getting that number, but I am going to be watching them year over year to see how they're doing against that goal, because it is a pretty big one.
Well, the 5 billion number that they're at right now actually is impressive. And if we take a walk back through memory lane, if you recall, Arista started off primarily as a company selling to web scale. Then they moved into enterprise data center, which I thought made some sense because it was a good adjacency from where they were. And then they went down this path of trying to go to enterprise campus. They bought Mojo to get into Wi-Fi, SD-WAN. And to be honest, Bob, I was a little skeptical that they could actually execute on those areas because it's a much different sell, right? But the company seems to have pivoted nicely. And what do you think of where they are right now?
Yeah, I think it's good. And I think the other thing I'd add to that as well is also the play in security. They acquired some security companies and they're starting to talk that up. I think they've done a nice job of being able to land and expand in the enterprise. So focus on their core strength, which was that data center space, and then be able to bring everything in. The key to me is, though, when they brought other technologies in, when they acquired companies, when they expanded, they stayed true to EOS. So you've got a common operating system across all of those platforms, which makes it far more attractive for organizations that really want to adopt that technology, right? So we all know that the network's getting far more distributed. We know it's getting a lot more complicated. So the ability to have technology that actually drives an operational efficiency, because you don't really have to relearn, right? I refer to this as my principle of least astonishment. When you deploy the campus gear and you go to fire up the management, it's like, hey, I'm familiar with that, right? I've seen it in the data center. So I think those types of decisions that they've made to stay true to the EOS platform and deliver that all the way across, their data lake that they've created, all those things, Cloud Vision, are all working across that entire stack, which I think has really been helpful for them expanding into the enterprise.
Yeah, what's been, I think, the most impressive from my standpoint is the fact that they have that one operating system and that single architecture, but they can mix and match silicon, right? And so when you think of the difference between Intel silicon, Broadcom silicon, whoever, their ability to be able to go grab the next generation of that silicon, drop it in without disruption. And if you think back to, remember the old Force 10 company?
Yes.
They had a very similar go-to-market as Arista, but when then they came out with that Fulcrum box, they had to completely rewrite the operating system, and that created so much overhead that the company, essentially got crushed under the weight of that. And so Arista's never actually had that happen to them. They've been able to maintain that single operating system. And I think what's important there, you mentioned their data lake, NetDL, but that's also based off common telemetry as well, right? And so I've wondered, to myself whether they could actually maintain this in perpetuity, but it certainly seems like they had, and it doesn't seem like there's any slowing down there. I think also from an Arista standpoint, there's always been some skepticism in the industry of white box versus a pre-configured box, and Jayshree called it a blue box yesterday. But
Right.
the thing with EOS is it allows them to deliver their value as a white box, or as she called it, a blue box, and that gives their customers choice. And so, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea because even with the big cloud providers, they want to have redundancy to a certain extent. And so the key from what I heard yesterday is that they're not just hoping they're part of the solution, they're actively working with the cloud providers on the design so that they can leverage pieces of that as well
Yeah.
for what they're doing. So whether that's, the I don't know, the names that they're working with today, who are able to do that. And so it makes it, I think, very synergistic for them to be able to have the blue boxes and the white boxes and to keep that model going forward as well. So I think, like I said, I think they've done a good job. They're not just kind of building it and hoping they'll come. They're actually actively working with them to determine what the next generations are going to be and how that's going to fit for their white boxes as well as it will for the Arista environment as well.
Yeah, well, so we'll see if they can make this run to 10 billion. The important thing to understand there too is that during the presentations they outlined their overall total addressable market, their TAM, and they have that listed as 60 billion now. The TAM, of course, is growing, and it's comprised of everything from data center to cloud networking. I think there's a little bit of security in there, SD-WAN, and while it's 60 billion today, which would mean at 5 billion, they're 1/12 of the overall market. I'm assuming the TAM is going to continue to grow over the next 6 years. So I do think they have a realistic chance of getting there. So
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. Like I said, it's, I think when they talked about some of the growth areas, and I'm assuming we'll get into that very shortly, where their TAM was growing and what's going to allow them to grow, I thought it was interesting that the ones that were highlighted were around things like AI and I think, what was the other one? It was around campus, I think.
Yeah.
And
actually,
I think
let's
you want to, okay, we'll hold on that.
Yeah,
but yeah,
let's hold that. Let's pivot to AI, because we can't.
okay.
There's no conference you ever go to now where AI isn't the centerpiece of the discussion. And AI networking, of course, is the role Arista would play in it. And AI networking is probably one of the more underappreciated aspects of artificial intelligence. When I think of AI, I think it needs three things: fast processor, hence the explosion of GPUs; fast storage, right, hence the explosion of NVMe and flash; and then, of course, fast networking. And we've seen network speeds continue to grow. They're talking about terabit networking now. We're running around the corner from 1.6 terabyte. So, Arista is the company to deliver that fast networking. Now, Jayshree did outline a TAM of 5 billion on that, which is smaller than what other companies have highlighted, but she had a very interesting distinction that in Arista's view, AI networking is really only the part of the network that touches the GPU, as she described it. And so, when you think about AI networking, how do you think about it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because when I think about AI networking, the one other thing that I would add, you had said storage, but I would say that data and having timely data is also really important. So that ties to the fact that so much of the data, at least from the enterprise side, is coming from distributed locations, right? The rise in IoT, the sensors, manufacturing, all these sites. So you're right. I think it was a very conservative TAM based on just thinking about AI for network, AI networking being just the back end support for that environment, and didn't have anything to do with the transport of all that data back to the centralized locations and so forth for crunching and analysis and whatnot. So, like I said, so I think of it in multiple ways, because I know that data is so important to it, and having that data timely is important. So getting that data, bringing it back, leveraging it, pulling it all together. Certainly there's the back end, there's the pieces that are going to be on the front end as well. But like I said, I think overall it was a conservative estimate. And so I think that's giving them a little padding for where they can potentially grow. But I think it's good to be conservative right now, because it's still a little bit of the Wild West. We don't know what's going to shake down. I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit, right? There's competing protocols as to what type of network should really be hosting those AI environments. So I think for now, I think that makes a lot of sense. Certainly, the buzz doesn't seem to be dying down. Everyone is moving forward with AI in every shape, form, and factor that they can think of. And so, for us, it's just a matter of, like, this is kind of a hang on for the ride, and we'll see where it all ends.
And how do you think they're positioned in AI networking?
Well, I mean, Arista's always been the performance, right? Focused on performance. So whether it be high frequency trading, whether it be for the cloud, the scale, when other vendors are coming out with 400, they're talking about, 1.6, right? 1600. So I think from that perspective, it makes perfect sense for them to be really focused on the AI space, right? Anywhere there's a massive need for performance, you're going to hear Arista's name come up.
Yeah, I've always thought about them as the network company that makes hard networking easier, right? And they've done it. They've done a good job of that. And certainly the network is foundational to so many things. And given the amount of data being used in AI, it certainly is from from a network perspective. Now you had touched on the competing protocols, right? Arista was a founding member along with many other companies of the Alternate Ethernet Forum, and that is yet another attempt for Ethernet to disrupt InfiniBand, and it's an interesting approach and an interesting thing to talk about, because I think for decades now it seems like we've been talking about Ethernet as a replacement for InfiniBand, just because it's difficult in a data center like that to have these different protocols, right? So you're Ethernet everywhere except where it's InfiniBand, and then Infiniband's pretty brittle as well. And so how do you think Ultra Ethernet's going to do as it goes up against the incumbent protocol, which is Infiniband?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know that I think it was Jay Shree. Was it Jay Shree who mentioned the quote from Bob Metcalf yesterday? And I've got my own favorite one, in which he said, Bob Metcalf said, "I don't know what's going to come after Ethernet, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be called Ethernet." So I think what we're seeing here, and I think you hit it right on the head there, that organizations don't want to have multiple different technologies. Everyone is familiar with Ethernet. They know how it works. They're familiar with it. So the need to bring in a different technology, I know they've done it for a long time for HPC environments and things like that, which have largely been kind of that lunatic fringe, right? And really not wholesale. AI is going to be wholesale. Everyone is going to be doing it. Everyone's going to be spinning up environments. So not just the big cloud providers who are really into it today, but you could easily see a lot of the enterprises starting to deploy their own models and things like that, where they want to keep it inside, whether it's a large language model, small language model. So I think what you're going to see is organizations looking to want to adopt Ethernet if they can, especially if there's a price efficiency there as well. Right. So if InfiniBand is going to be a lot more expensive, 2x,
it certainly is. Right.
Yeah. Right. And so that ability to bring that common open Ethernet to this market, I think makes a lot of sense. So I think we're looking forward to see where the Ultra Ethernet Consortium takes this. I know it was just started. I think the first release will be something next year. So I'm looking forward to following that progress and seeing how it does. Obviously, AI is still incredibly early, but I think Arista has done a nice job of laying out these are the scenarios, and this is how Ethernet can help. So kind of putting together those blueprints for, if you're doing this, this is the model. If you're doing that, that's the model.
Yeah, and I think actually one of the things they didn't tie together during their AI discussion were the validated designs. I know the Arista validated designs have been very popular. In fact, when Jay Shree talked in the Q&A with the equity analysts, one of the questions was, well, what's the benefit of it? And her explanation was, if you look historically at the way InfiniBand is used, it's to deliver AI as a vertically integrated system, right? And then what Ultra Ethernet brings is a way of doing it a lot more open, so a customer can go use best of breed components. I think the reason they haven't in the past is because it's difficult to put together those best of breed components, right? So that vertically integrated stack, while it lacks choice, it actually does deliver some guarantee of performance. So I think as Arista goes to market, their ability to bring that concept of the validated design to the openness of that, of Ultra Ethernet does become increasingly important.
Yeah, and it really mimics what they're doing today with the cloud providers, right? Being open, here's the design, here's how you should build it, right? Here's the architecture. So, and I think, like I said, having those validated designs will accelerate the time to value. And that's really what Infiniband offers. Yes, it's a lot more expensive, but okay, I can just buy that whole stack and deploy it. Great. Yeah. And so
now,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, finish the thought.
No, I was just going to say, and so for organizations that want to, accelerate their time to value for AI, having these validated designs will help them do that. Like, I just need to pull this down for this, right? Because I said they've got it for each type of environment that you might want, and they've got the design module. So it makes it a lot easier to adopt the Ethernet technology.
Yeah, so now let's pivot the AI discussion to AI is a tool for network operations, right?
Yeah.
So I think we understand the role Arista is going to play in building high performance networks to support AI initiatives. But the other side of AI is using it to actually make network operations easier. And this comes down to, as you talked about before, data, right? If we're going to roll out AI as a network operations tool and move to this world where we have fully autonomous networks, then we have to have that end-to-end data. And here is really where I see Arista's strength coming through. The fact that their data lake has common telemetry from WAN through campus, through data center, through cloud, in fact. And so, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think their transition to cloud vision as well was a big move, because without the data coming back to Arista, you've just got puddles of data at all your customers. Now you've got all that data centralized. You can leverage it to build out your algorithms and improve the algorithms. You can set up, some closed loop functions that will allow the users to give feedback to the AI and the recommendations, so you're constantly improving it. So I think, like I said, they did a great job in the EOS, and then now they've got the NetDL, and paired with Cloud Vision, it's a really powerful story to be able to say, we're going to take all this data, we're going to bring it in one place, we're going to be able to, analyze it and build out our algorithms better, which is then going to enable to enhance your operations environment, right? For optimizing, for healing. And ultimately, right, this is what so many people talk about, is moving from reactive to proactive and then predictive. And how can I leverage AI to help me do that? So the fact that they've got all this put together, that they're actively collecting all this data, it only means it's going to improve as time progresses.
All right, so let's close the door on AI, although I'm sure we'll have many, many more discussions on it. And let's pivot a little to the other high growth area for the minute, security. In fact, if they execute on security, right, the security TAM is far more fragmented and far bigger than AI actually is. And so right now, do you consider Arista a security vendor today?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I would say certainly with the recent announcements they've made, they've certainly got the right to make that claim. Right, partnering with Zscaler, who's obviously one of the leaders in ZTNA. They've come out with their NAC, they've got their NDR, and a bunch of other functionality that they're building out. So yeah, I mean, they're not fully SASE or anything like that, but they've definitely got a lot of the pieces of the puzzle. So enough so that I think organizations will start taking a look at, especially if you're already an Arista networking customer, it makes sense to maybe look at how this, and as I recall, all the data that's coming in through the security is still all flowing up through Cloud Vision. So as we talked about that architecture that's extensible, they've not only extended it from the cloud to the data center to the campus and WAN, Wi-Fi and WAN, but now they're also doing it for security and bringing that data in as well. So it makes a compelling argument for organizations that want to be able to consolidate, especially those that are converging their network and security teams, to be able to have tools that each of those groups can access while they're coming together.
Yeah, when I think of Arista and security, if you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have said absolutely not. If you had asked me last year, I would have been on the fence. And this year, while I still don't think they're a security vendor in the way we would think, of a security pure play, I think they are a network company that can sell security through network operations, but more importantly, provide data to the security operations team. Right. And so while I haven't seen a lot of large enterprises converge networking and security teams yet, I think the trend is there. And so I think they, without actually, being a full-fledged security vendor, can participate in the growth of security nicely. Right. So I think they've done a lot of things to use their data to enhance SecOps, which I think in some ways is more important than just rolling out a bunch of tools. The other side is something that you mentioned too, which was announced yesterday as well, was the partnership with Zscaler. And I thought that was interesting for a whole bunch of different reasons. First of all, from a Zscaler perspective, they're a company that historically I didn't think would do this, but I think now they realize that there is some value in understanding east-west traffic, right? And so what did you think of that partnership?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, it enables it enables Arista to address the continuing hybrid work environment from a ZTNA perspective. So the way I looked at it when I saw the announcement was, this is great. So Zscaler is handling everything from an outside in perspective, and Arista is going to be able to handle the inside out perspective and look at it. And I think the one thing that we've seen is that with the applications becoming a lot more distributed, that the idea of perimeter security is gone. So organizations need to drive that security closer and closer to the applications. So bringing it into the campus, bringing it into the data center, having the Arista switches being a point of enforcement. So you can create your centralized policies and then be able to have those switches act as an enforcement point. I think it really helps organizations to mitigate risk, because if something does happen, you're at least limiting the blast radius by enforcing it in that switch level. Right? It used to be, right, the castle and moat, and if you got across the moat, you got access to everything. And now what you're seeing is that there's a lot more security functions that are taking place within those campus, within the data center, and I think that's really needed. So I think overall, like I said, and the other part of this, I think, if I recall correctly, is they're actually sharing information.
They are,
right?
yeah.
So they've got the APIs, which is great. So the CloudVision is connecting directly to Zscaler and Zscaler to CloudVision. So it's going bi-directional. So it's not a handshake partnership and like, hey, look, we'll sell you this and we'll meet in the field and we'll each sell our own. They've actually done some work and integrated the products. And I think for Zscaler, to your point about Arista not being perceived as a security company and having all those capabilities, it's a great fit for them to be able to extend.
The point you brought up is interesting too. It's not just a co-marketing partnership, and frankly, knowing Zscaler and Arista, I wouldn't expect them to ever have a co-marketing type of partnership. They are doing an exchange of data through APIs. But I did ask on the pre-briefing what's next, and they did allude to the fact that there is some more co-development to come, and so you can think of the API exchange as the 1.0 of this relationship, with more to come in a custom way, for customers. I think that's great for customers. I think Arista and Zscaler are two of the more technically sound companies, and so I think as these two decide to go build up more functionality, I think the customer winds up ultimately being the winner.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, Bob. Well, that kind of wraps up the big news. I think, Arista is a company that cut its teeth on high performance networking, and I think that will certainly serve them well in the AI space. But Arista is more than that today, right? As we talked about, they have good data center products, but also campus, Wi-Fi, SD-WAN, and now we can think of Arista as a security company. So, any last words here, Bob?
No, I think it was a great update for everyone to listen in on. I think it's going to be really fun to watch over the next 6 years to see them get to $10 billion. And it's going to be really interesting to see how all of the technologies they're bringing to bear, especially for AI, especially for the enterprise and campus and security, all play out over the next couple of years and how they're received. So I'm looking forward to it. All
right, Bob. Well, it's always a pleasure having you on, and I look forward to the next time you're on. On behalf of Bob Laliberte from ESG, I'm Zeus Caraval from ZK Research, and thanks for watching. As always, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on another ZKast.